And when it comes to perspective and core values and purpose, no one has lived those better than my good friend and mentor, Jay Billis of ESPN. For any of you that don't follow basketball, just know Jay is the face of ESPN College Game Day. He is Mr. College Basketball. And back in early December of 2010, Jay was asked to call a game that pitted Duke versus Butler. And there was a lot of anticipation around this game because those were the two teams that met 9 months previously in the national championship game, where Duke narrowly escaped with a 2-point win. And it's very rare in college basketball that the two teams that meet on the biggest stage in early April meet again in early December. So like I said, there was a lot of anticipation around this game. Part of Jay's responsibility with ESPN is the day before he's going to call a game, he goes and he watches both teams practice so that he can learn their strategies, their keys to victory, learn everything he can about their personnel so that he's armed with plenty of fodder for the next day on air. Well, Jay, being a Duke alum, he decided that he was going to go watch Duke practice first. And at the time, Duke was led by recently retired Hall of Fame coach, Coach K, the all-time winningest coach in the history of men's basketball. And Jay went to the Duke practice and saw Coach K saying with great confidence, clarity, and conviction, guys, if you do what we do well, if you play to our strengths and you execute our game plan, we're going to be more than fine tomorrow because we clearly have a competitive advantage. See, we're bigger, stronger, and more powerful than they are. We're going to pound the ball down low and get easy layups and dunks. We're going to out-rebound them, and we're going to put a hand up to challenge every shot. You do what we do well, you play to our strengths, you execute our game plan, we're going to be more than fine tomorrow because we clearly have a competitive advantage. And Jay left that practice and was thinking, this might be an absolute massacre tomorrow. Coach K, one of the best to ever blow a whistle or hold a clipboard, just told his team definitively why they have a competitive advantage. But he needed to do his full due diligence. So he went to watch the Butler Bulldogs practice, who at the time were led by Coach Brad Stevens. 3 years ago, Brad Stevens was promoted from head coach to president of basketball operations with the world champion Boston Celtics. One of the greatest basketball minds I've ever been around. And to Jay's surprise, Coach Stevens was saying to the Butler Bulldogs with the exact same level of confidence, clarity, and conviction, guys, if you do what we do well and you play to our strengths and you execute our game plan, trust me, we'll be more than fine. Because we clearly have the competitive advantage. See, we're smaller, quicker, and faster than they are. We're gonna be able to get tons of points on fast breaks and in transition. We'll put on a smothering full court press, and there's no way their big guys can get out to our corner shooters. You play to our strengths, you do what we do well, you execute our game plan, I promise you we'll be fine because we clearly have a competitive advantage. And Jay left that practice and was thinking, I got no idea who's gonna win this game. Both of these Hall of Fame caliber coaches had the self-awareness and the team awareness to know what they do well, to know where their strengths lie, but most importantly, they knew what type of game plan they needed to execute to give them the best chance to be successful. And I share that with you for a very specific reason. Every one of you has talents. Every one of you has gifts. Every one of you has strengths that you need to make sure you are fully aware of and that you are investing in on a daily basis, because that's what's going to help separate you from the millions of people in the real estate game. You need to get crystal clear on the game plan that you need to execute based on your strengths and your talents to give you a competitive advantage. See, here's the thing about Coach K and Coach Stevens. They both were 100% correct. It's a matter of vantage point. It's a matter of opinion. It's a matter of perspective. It's a matter of what they chose to focus on. And I want to encourage each and every one of you to make the conscious decision to choose to focus on what it is that you do really, really well, what it is that you do at a world-class level, and continue to double down on that. That is how you create separation. That is how you give yourself a competitive advantage. Now, if I do my job over the next few minutes, as we talk about habits and mindset and focus, I'm hoping that becomes part of your secret sauce. I'm hoping the self-awareness and the leveling up of your habits, your mindset, and your focus is part of what's gonna separate you from everybody else. So right now, we're gonna dive into the 3 pillars that will allow you to increase your performance, increase your productivity, and increase your ability to execute. And as I just teed up, those are our habits, our mindset, and our focus. So let's take a look at habits. The things we do unconsciously and the things we do consistently. A few years ago, I read a study that says almost half of everything we do from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed is habitual. Think about that. Almost half of everything you do from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed is on autopilot. Every single one of us has grooved a series of repeatable, borderline predictable behaviors that we now derive comfort from. Now I have to ask you all a very important rhetorical question. I already told you that the mere fact that you are in this room and you're a part of this incredible summit means you are a high performer. That is my evaluation of you. You are a high performer. But here might be the most important question anyone asks you all weekend. Are you a high performer because of your habits? Or are you a high performer in spite of your habits? If you were to put pen to paper and write down the things you do every single day of your life, what percentage of those things are taking you closer to the person you're trying to become? And what percentage of those things are holding you back and dragging you down? If you literally write down the stuff y'all do every single day of your life, how many of those things are taking you closer to being the realtor that you're capable of, and how many of those things are sabotaging and anchoring you down? Now, with that said, I don't want anyone to be stifled by perfection. Life is not a perfect game. Basketball ain't a perfect game. Real estate ain't a perfect game. What I do want is for you to be motivated by progress. And full disclaimer, by the way, all of this stuff that I'm sharing with you, every single thing I share on stage and every single thing I share on page, I ain't coming from a place of mastery. I haven't figured all of this stuff out. I promise you the same stuff that you guys are challenged with and the same stuff y'all struggle with is the same stuff I'm challenged with and the same stuff I struggle with. But here's what I can say with a huge smile. I like the progress I'm making. I like the direction that I'm going. And that's what I want to make sure each and every one of you internalizes. Don't worry about where you are in this moment as far as where you fall on the spectrum of realtors. What I want you to make sure is that you're going in the right direction, that you are headed in the direction that you choose. That part is going to be absolutely imperative in making sure that you get the most out of every single thing that we're doing here. And we do that with our habits. So right now, and I hate to be that teacher, I'm going to give you guys a quick homework assignment. We don't have time to do it now, but this is something I want you to sit with over the next few days. And I promise you, those of you that have the honesty, the vulnerability, and the courage to do this self-audit that I'm about to explain, it is an absolute game changer for you. Here's how it works. Sometime over the next few days, take out a piece of paper and draw a vertical line down the middle. On the left side of the line, I want you to write an exhaustive list of the things that fill your bucket, the things that light you up, the things that give you energy, that give you confidence, that make you smile, that make you feel alive. These can be things for your physical, your mental, your emotional, or your spiritual well-being if that's appropriate to you. But I want you to come up with an exhaustive list. Maybe it's taking a yoga class or hopping on your Peloton bike. Maybe it's taking your dog for a long walk. Maybe it's meditation or prayer. Maybe it's reading a good book or listening to a podcast. Whatever it is, the things that fill you up and nourish your soul and make you feel alive, I want you to come up with an exhaustive list on the left side of the paper. Then on the right side of the paper, I want you to write down how you've been spending the bookends of your day, your morning and your evening routine. What do you typically do for the first 60 minutes after you wake up? And what do you typically do for the 60 minutes before you go to bed? And remember that study I just referenced a moment ago. Every single one of y'all has a morning and an evening routine, I promise you. My only question is, have you designed it with intention, or have you walked backwards into it? Is it a default? Because we need to be incredibly purposeful and intentional about protecting the bookends of our day. So I just want you to get some clarity and write down what you've been doing in the morning and what you've been doing in the evening. There is no wrong answer. But then to complete this self-audit, I want you to compare the two sets of notes, the two sides of the line. And I want you to ask yourself what I believe is the most fundamental question you can ask yourself when it comes to raising your individual performance and productivity and ability to execute. And that is, are you doing the things you know you need to do to fill your bucket? In other words, is the stuff on the left side of the paper showing up on the right side of the paper? The things that you know light you up and give you energy, are you doing those things consistently in the mornings and evenings? Some of you may be, some of you may not. It's not for me to judge. But no matter where you fall on that, if every single one of you does that with some honesty and some vulnerability, you will most likely start to uncover what's called a performance gap. And a performance gap is the gap between what we know and what we do. It's the gap between what we know we should be doing, left side of the paper, and what we actually do on a daily basis, right side of the paper. And my goal for you is to empower you, to inspire you, and to challenge you to start taking stuff from the left side and start sprinkling it on the right side. Care enough about yourself, care enough about your loved ones, care enough about those that you serve to prioritize your self-care so that you bookend your day with the things that make you feel alive so that you can show up and make a meaningful contribution to as many people as possible. If you are willing to do that self-audit and you are willing to actually make the requisite changes of sprinkling that stuff into your morning and evening routines, I promise you, you will see your energy go up. You will see your confidence go up. You will see your optimism go up. You will see your ability to execute go up. Your production will go up. Every single aspect of your life will start to improve when you prioritize self-care and make sure your bucket is full. Now, the second pillar is mindset. How you choose to view the world around you. And I want to encourage and empower and challenge each and every one of you to adopt what I call the winner's mindset. And that is making the conscious choice to wake up every day and make the commitment to do the best you can with what you have wherever you are. Full stop. Remember, we don't need to make it any more complex than that. We want to simplify success. Do the best you can with what you have wherever you are. Here's why I use that as the foundational piece to my own personal operating system. See, when you do the best you can with what you have wherever you are, you automatically, by default, eliminate a trilogy of behaviors that I know from firsthand experience will undermine all of those traits I just mentioned ago. They will undermine your energy, your optimism, your confidence, your production, your ability to execute. And what are those three traits? Blaming, complaining, and making excuses. Blaming, complaining, and making excuses. I choose to use absolutes very sparingly, but you will never, ever improve your life, improve your business, or move yourself forward by blaming, complaining, and making excuses. So the sooner you can learn to untether from the temptation, and trust me, that temptation is very real and very tangible, but the sooner you can untether from the temptation to blame, complain, and make excuses, you automatically become emotionally more agile. And do you know what you are if you're not emotionally agile? You're emotionally fragile. And you simply can't succeed in the real estate space if you're emotionally fragile. Now, a perfect example of this, and I know it was brought up earlier, Mike brought it up, is the NAR settlement. I have a couple dozen friends that are in the same world that you all are in, and I've talked to every single one of them. Not a single one of them likes the result of that settlement. Not a single one of them prefers what came out of that legislation. But guess what? It doesn't matter. And I mean this with all the compassion and empathy in my heart. Their feelings don't matter. So for those of you, whether you like the result of the NAR settlement or not, those of you that choose to adapt to it, to lean into it, to embrace it as a challenge, and to pivot your system and style of execution accordingly, y'all are going to be the ones that win. And those of you that choose to blame, complain, and make excuses about it, y'all are going to be the ones that don't. So the sooner you can accept that as a reality, the sooner you can start to become productive and move forward. Because it makes no sense to fight against reality. Fighting against reality is a fight you'll only lose 100% of the time. So the sooner you can lean into that, regardless of whether or not it's a preference, the better off you'll be. And I also want to let you guys know that I'm sure there's some other tough times coming. There's going to be some tough times and some challenges ahead. And I know, I hear it all the time. Alan, you're a motivational speaker. Aren't you supposed to be more positive? You know what? You're right. I'm positive there's going to be some challenges and tough times ahead. So just lean into it. Just know that it's coming. And in fact, when things get tougher, when there are adjustments to be made, like the NAR settlement, that's when you actually create market share. That's when you create separation. See, when everything is going great, real estate becomes easier by default. You can be a below average real estate agent and sell homes when the market's fantastic. And no offense to those folks, but you earn your stripes when things are tough, when things are challenging. So I want to encourage each and every one of you to lean into that. Now, the third component to improve our production, to improve our performance, to improve our ability to execute is going to be focus. Or actually what I'm going to call the ability to refocus. Because in today's day and age, I don't know that it's a realistic expectation for any of us to have long periods of sustained, uninterrupted focus. We just have too many things vying for our attention. A good portion of which are those devices that everybody seems to be tethered to 24/7. But we can develop the skill to refocus the lens. Now, how many of you have ever heard of the acronym WTF? Don't say it out loud. This is a family-friendly keynote. You know what that needs to stand for? Where to focus. And I'm going to tell you where to focus, and if you're taking notes, you're going to write this down. Here's another acronym. The acronym is WIN. W-I-N. W-I-N. And it stands for what's important now. In any given moment of any given day, you need to be able, no matter what you were doing, to take a breath, take a beat, take a pause, and consciously ask yourself, am I choosing to place my attention in what I deem most important in this moment? I'm going to say it again because it's that important. Any given moment of any given day, take a beat, take a breath, take a pause, and consciously ask yourself, am I choosing to give my attention to what I believe is most important in this moment? Now, if I'm doing my job right now, I'm hoping that's what I'm saying on stage. A little bit later today, when you guys are having conversations with each other, give that person your full undivided attention. I would hope that anytime you're meeting with a client or you're meeting with a prospect, you're giving them your full undivided attention. But make sure that bleeds over to every area of your life. When you're sitting with your family at the dinner table, are they getting your full undivided attention? What you need to do is figure out what is most important in the moment, and that's where you need to align all of your faculties. What I'm asking you to do is to be in the present moment. Now, the short definition of be in the present moment, I heard this from both Nick Saban and Oprah, and I figure if those two people are saying it, it has to be true. And that is learn how to be where your feet are. Be where your feet are. Wherever your feet are, make sure that's where your head and your heart are as well. We got to get all of our faculties in alignment. If you're going to be somewhere, then be somewhere. If you're going to be somewhere, don't be somewhere else. Get everything in alignment. Now, a more expanded definition of being in the present moment, to no surprise, has three components. You have to learn how to refocus the lens on the next play, refocus the lens on what you have control over. We call that control the controllables. And arguably the biggest piece for y'all is refocus the lens on the process. So let's take a look at next play. Back in my previous career, when I was working with the game's best players, in addition to helping them improve their physical athleticism and capacity for work, my number one job was to get our players to play present. And the cornerstone of play present was focus on the next play. You just missed a layup, it's okay, next play. You just turned the ball over, it's okay, next play. Yes, I know the referee didn't make a call. It happens sometimes in basketball. Next play. Why would I want my players focused on the next play? There's nothing they can do about the play that just happened. It's over. It's in the past. It's in the rearview mirror. It is unchangeable. There's nothing they can do about that missed layup, that turnover, or that referee's inability to make a call. It is over. It is in the past. It's in the rearview mirror, and it is unchangeable. If you're taking notes, you're going to want to write this down. Any energy or focus you waste on something in the past that can't be changed means you don't have that energy and focus to invest in the present moment where you can still make a difference. Don't worry, I'll say that again. I know that was a mouthful and I know I talk fast. Any energy or focus you waste on something in the past that can't be changed means you don't have that energy and focus available to invest in the present moment where you can still make a difference. One of the most difficult and challenging skills for any of us to develop is the ability to quickly move to the next play. You have 3 or 4 appointments in a day and none of them go the way that you'd hoped. Are you able to flip the script and move to the next play? If you do have a 5th appointment that day, are you dragging in that negative energy? Are you dragging in your woe is me feelings to that 5th? Because that's the only one that matters. Now, there'll be a time and a place to go back and debrief, go back and say, hey, what went off the rails in those first 4 appointments? But it ain't time to do it in that 5th appointment. So we have to be able to move to the next play. Second component of being in the present moment is control the controllables. Refocus the lens on what you have control over. I'm a huge believer that there's only 2 things in this world we have 100% control over 100% of the time. That's our effort and our attitude. Now, I don't want this to be a game of verbal semantics. Yes, you can take effort and attitude, mix them together, you get preparation. You're absolutely in control of how prepared you choose to be for every single scenario. You can take effort and attitude, mix them together, you get enthusiasm. You're absolutely in control of how enthusiastic you choose to be at any given time. But those are just spokes off of the same wheel. Ultimately, we're talking about the same thing, effort and attitude. So let's take a look at effort. Every single high performer that I've had an opportunity to work with, and I would assume you all are included, has agreed that working hard is a choice. I agree wholeheartedly. But here's what most people won't admit. If working hard is a choice, then not working hard, it's also a choice. It's a choice by default because there has to be another side of that coin. And it cannot be a choice that you choose to make very consistently if your goal is to be a player in the real estate game. You need to choose to give the best effort possible as consistently as possible. Choose to give the best effort possible as consistently as possible. Very basic premise. I don't think I lost anyone on that, but I know that that is not easy to do because there's plenty of times where you don't feel like working hard. It's not convenient to work hard. You don't want to work hard, and I get it. But you need to do that as consistently as you possibly can. Second half of that is attitude. And for the most part, I covered attitude when I was talking about mindset, but we need to double click on it because it is that important. Attitude is being able to say, I do not control what goes on around me, but I always control my response. I don't control situations, I don't control events, I don't control what people say, I don't control what people do, I don't control the NAR settlement, but I absolutely get a chance to control my response. And high performers and high producers and those that execute choose to have thoughtful, intentional responses that always move them forward, regardless of what the external circumstances are. I mentioned earlier that I have twin sons. And I don't know if you guys know this about twin sons or not. They like to fight. They like to bicker. They like to pick at each other. And I had my twin sons, Luke and Jack, with me a couple years ago, and it was just the 3 of us, and for whatever reason, they just kept nipping and fighting with each other. And my patience was running short, and I thought I had warned them sufficiently, but they kept doing it, and it just finally got to a point I had enough. And I said, Jack, knock it off. You're irritating me. And he smirked, and he said, Dad, I'm not irritating you. You're choosing to be irritated. Touché, Jack. Touché. Well played. He was 100% correct. I could not control the fact that him and his brother were fighting. I absolutely could control my response. And in that moment, I chose irritation. So maybe those 2 knuckleheads were listening to that keynote in Vegas after all. So that's our attitude. We always get the opportunity to choose our response. And now the third pillar And I gotta be honest, I hope that what I've shared with you so far, at the very least, has been somewhat helpful. Is something you'll be able to apply and to use. Oh no, I wasn't pandering for that. All right, I guess, go ahead. No, I'm just kidding. What I was about to say is what I've shared so far I sure hope is helpful, but I actually think this piece right here, the process piece, might be the most important thing I'm gonna share with you all day. So if you haven't been listening, you might wanna go ahead and dial in. And that is refocusing the lens on the process. I am a huge believer in focusing on the process to increase the chance that we get the results that we're looking for. And the best way I can describe the process, if any of you are ever tasked with building a brick wall, don't focus so much on the wall. Focus on the bricks. See, if you can take each and every brick and lay each and every brick with care and precision and put each and every brick exactly where it needs to go, guess what? The wall takes care of itself. You don't have to focus on the wall. The power's in the bricks. The juice is in the bricks. So if each and every one of you has aspirations to sell X number of homes in 2025, if I do my job now, I'm going to convince you to dial into the process of what will allow that to happen. But before I do that, I want to give you a couple examples. The first is from the sports world, since that's the world that I spent most of my career. The best group that I've ever seen dial into the process was the Queens University men's basketball team. Queens University down in Charlotte, North Carolina. Recently moved to Division I, but when I had a chance to work with them and their then head coach, Bart Lundy, they were one of the top programs in Division II in the United States. Phenomenal program, and Bart Lundy is one of the best coaches that I've ever been around. And Coach Lundy figured out, after watching a decade's worth of film, that there were 4 key statistics that heavily dictated if Queens would win the basketball game. And for a little bit of context, sports and basketball, for that matter, are what Simon Sinek calls a finite game. There's a definitive start, there's a definitive stop, and every person around the globe has unanimously agreed that the team with the most points on the scoreboard when the final buzzer goes off is declared the winner. It's not arbitrary. Business and real estate is what's called an infinite game. It's a little more esoteric, a little more evergreen. It's not as clear cut. However, this example and this analogy still applies. So Coach Lundy figured out that there were 4 key statistics that heavily dictated if Queens would have the most points on the scoreboard when the final buzzer went off. For those of you that follow basketball, these will be blatantly obvious. For those of you that don't, I'll do the best I can to drop some breadcrumbs and make them blatantly obvious. The first is turnover differential. If we can have more possessions than our opponent, it gives us a better chance to win. The second was offensive rebound differential. If we can take more shots than our opponent, it gives us a better chance to win. Third were free throws attempted. The free throw based on each possession is the highest percentage shot in the game of college basketball, and if we can take more of those than our opponent, it gives us the better chance to win. And fourth were three-pointers attempted. The three-pointer is a massive weapon in college basketball, and if we can take more threes, clean looks from 3 than our opponent, it gives us a better chance to win. When Queens University came out on top in those 4 statistical categories, they won 97% of their games. I'm gonna say that again because I don't think y'all think that's as cool as I do. When they came out on top just in those 4 statistical categories, they won 97% of their games, which means statistically and mathematically, they were almost unbeatable when they just did those 4 things. So now I'm gonna ask you high performers a series of rhetorical questions. What do you think Coach Lundy and his staff talked about, emphasized, and reiterated every workout, every practice, every film session, and every game? Those 4 things. What do you think Coach Lundy and his staff used to design every practice plan, every workout plan, every film breakdown, and every game plan? Those 4 things. Coach Lundy and his staff never talked about winning, never talked about banners, never talked about trophies, never talked about championships. All they talked about were those 4 things. You know why? If his team could execute those 4 things, the winning, the championships, the trophies, and the banners would all take care of themselves. See, when you focus on the process, the scoreboard takes care of itself. And here's another example, more in the business world. A good friend of mine, a fellow keynote speaker, before he got into the speaking game, he owned a very successful pool installation business. He sold pools for a living. And he was a self-admitted data nerd. He loved looking at the back-end analytics on his website, on his blog, and on his social channels. He liked to measure what was working. And here's what he found out. When a prospective customer, someone that was in the market to buy a pool, viewed 30 or more pages of his content, articles, blogs, videos, social posts, if they viewed 30 or more pieces of content, they purchased the pool 80% of the time. If they viewed less than 30 pages of content, they purchased the pool 25% of the time. Now, we all know the outcome he was looking for. He's trying to sell pools, but he didn't focus on selling pools. What did he focus on? Putting out a steady stream of captivating, compelling, educational content, because if he did that consistently, the pools would just sell themselves. Focus on the process and you'll get the outcomes that you want. So let's bring it full circle. Let's take it a little bit closer to your world. And I've got to speak in somewhat generalities because I know we've got somewhat of a mixed group here. And as I said, I've got a couple dozen friends that are in the real estate game, and this is what they've all shared with me. Obviously, the goal is to sell homes. And let's just say that you have the goal, and this could vary. It could be 25 homes in 2025. Maybe it's 40, maybe it's 50, maybe it's 100. But I want you to get crystal clear on the goal that you're going for in 2025. That's the mountaintop. But then I want you to start at the base. And I want you to figure out what are the measurable KPIs, the key performance indicators, that if you meet these consistently, the only natural result is to sell homes. Now, on some level, at the base of that mountain has to be awareness. People in your community have to be aware of you. Preferably, they know, they like, and they trust you, but they have to be aware of what it is that you do. And how do we do that? We network, we prospect, we put content out on social, we ask for referrals. So that's the baseline. That's just the ante just to sit at the table. But the base, the number one thing that I want you guys to start thinking about measuring are meaningful conversations with qualified prospects. That's something that you can absolutely measure. Meaningful conversations with qualified prospects. If you do those right, most of those will lead to appointments set. Hopefully most appointments set will lead to appointments met. Hopefully most appointment met will lead to offers and contracts, which ultimately yields a home sale. But I don't want you guys focused on the sale. I want you focused on the conversations. Now, every single person in here has a different set of skills. You're in a different area. That's the fun part of the real estate game. But let's just say, for example, it takes you 500 meaningful conversations to sell 50 homes. That's about a 10% conversion rate. That'd actually be world class. I mean, world class. And 500 meaningful conversations might sound like a lot, right? It's really not. 500 meaningful conversations is 2 a day, 5 days a week, 50 weeks out of the year. 2 meaningful conversations a day, 5 days a week, 50 weeks out of the year. So at the end of the day, I don't want you measuring your success on whether or not you sold a home. I want you measuring your success on whether or not you had 2 meaningful conversations. If you did, that day is a win. You're sticking to the process. And then guess what you got to do? Then it's just a matter of stacking days. Then it's just a matter of stacking days. And that is the hard part about the real estate game, because there is no guarantee. You can obviously go weeks and months without making a sale. But I want to encourage you to weather those tough times, to have the patience, the consistency, and the confidence to continue to have meaningful conversations with qualified prospects. Because if you stack those days, you are focusing on the process. And that will greatly increase the chance that you hit the goal that you're looking for.